Welcome to the Untangled Web3 podcast, your go-to hub to learn insights and the latest developments in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. I'm Alec Burns.
And I'm Jack Davis. Tune in each week as we navigate and explore the rapidly emerging landscape of the Web3 technologies, projects, and ideas that are shaping the future of the internet.
We'll be talking to the best and brightest in the industry to keep uncovering insights,
so that hopefully we can all learn together on our journey to untangle Web3. Welcome to another episode of the Untangled Web3 podcast. Today, we're delighted to be joined on the show by Colin Fitzpatrick. Colin is a vocal advocate of Web3 and host of the Web3 Leaders podcast, where he's interviewed a variety of key figures in the space, including the co-founder of the Sandbox Metaverse platform, Scott Page of Pink Floyd fame and now founder of Loot 8, and experts from the likes of Google and Meta. Colin is also a serial founder in the Web3 space, currently working on a project to create AI-powered virtual humans to revolutionize customer service and tech support for brands across the world. So without further ado, welcome, Colin. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm delighted to be here with you.
No, it's great. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. And yeah, I think well, there's loads of different topics. I know Alec has lots of things he wants to dig into around AI and metaverse, right?
You put me in it already. Now I've got to ask some insightful questions, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Colin, can you just give us a brief background about you? What's your career been like, and kind of what led you into Web3?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So I'm Irish. I'm from Dublin, not too far away from you guys, but I'm currently halfway across the world in Brazil. And usually, before that was living in Dubai. So I've been trotting the globe for quite a while and really enjoying the digital nomad lifestyle. I suppose my career is a long time, nearly 20 years in big tech companies, Oracle, Salesforce, Dell, HubSpot, etc. So very much company man, but always been an entrepreneurial spirit, and it's been really, really exciting and interesting to sort of be fleshing that out over the last little while. About 3 years ago, co-founded a project with a couple of friends around metaverse concerts and NFTs, which was very, very exciting. Got to work with the likes of Snoop Dogg, Alicia Keys, and some others, which has been a really, really, really cool experience and got me fantastic exposure. And then, always just been into crypto and Web3. I think I discovered Bitcoin and wanted to buy it when I was around $100, but, got persuaded out of it like everyone. Really regret that, but who knows? I probably could have sold it when I went double and forgot about it. But, been a big advocate of everything Web3, blockchain, metaverse, NFTs, all that sort of stuff. And I tend to write an awful lot about it on LinkedIn. So do give me a follow, because I try to be engaging as possible. I just really enjoy the journey. So I've been doing lots of stuff. I've always written an awful lot about AI, and especially over the last 6 months or so, it's really exploded. And I'm just a complete nerd about it. When people are at home watching Netflix and football, I'm watching AI stuff on YouTube and keeping up to date. And as everyone says, even though you're doing that, you still can't keep up because it's just insane. Mm-hmm. But currently working on a startup with a friend of mine. We're basically making AI-powered digital humans. So conversational digital avatars that you can talk to for tech support, customer service, provide great experience, because ultimately I just believe, there's no doubt in my mind, that within the next couple of years it'll swap for the de facto standard for anyone engaging with a company or a brand will be in AI very, very soon. And it has started. It's a bit clunky, but like everything in AI, it starts off clunky and then it gets almost indistinguishable, like we're seeing with Midjourney and stuff like that. And so, yeah, really happy to be deep in this space. It's a very, very difficult problem to solve, but there's a lot of people out there sort of bit by bit getting these issues over, and I think we're really about to hit the mainstream very, very soon.
I mean, it's interesting that you said, you kind of started off with knowledge of Bitcoin, as most people tend to, right? They tend to look at the crypto side and the investment side, and then eventually they kind of, after experiencing the space, they then come on to all the utility that come from it. You mentioned that you moved into the NFT space, and now you're talking about how you're moving in the AI space. Well, the question that a lot of our listeners will be asking right now is, how does AI relate to Web3? These are, two disparate fields that have developed, in isolation for a long time. But now the question is, how do these two fields relate to one another?
I mean, it's a very good question, and someone asked me that a little while ago. Hang on a second. Does Web3 encompass AI? And the short answer is no. It kind of doesn't. But I think in the longer term, the longer answer will be Web3 is really about, the future evolution of the internet, using blockchain, things like NFTs in the metaverse. And it'll probably, hopefully, maybe, envelop AI as well. There's a lot of people doing a lot of really cool stuff to try and bring those two technologies together. The way I would, and I'm definitely not an expert, but the way I would sort of put it is that I think we're going to be extremely reliant on blockchain and Web3 to solve some of the problems that we're going to see with AI. Because when AI agents come along, which they're already starting, and then we're unable to distinguish a human from a computer or a bot online, that is a very, very significant problem. And I think, having the blockchain to solve those problems is going to be a major one. I mean, we've already seen Sam Altman come out with his human coin, where they have this orb and they scan your eye, and then it's proof of personhood. I do know people who think that's an absolute disaster waiting for it to happen, and digital slavery and, various different things. But, the short answer is that we absolutely need the blockchain to be able to, solidify ownership value, and also, proof that a person is a person. And I think we will have to see some legislation there that hopefully makes it somewhat, illegal to represent someone as real when they're not.
It's exciting. I'm glad that you think that you already obviously have mature thoughts about this already, because there's only a few people in the space that are actually starting to talk and develop these kind of thoughts, and the need for this is becoming quite apparent. I think one of the things that we see kind of at the forefront right now is around generative AI is like deep fakes. Like a lot of people on social media, all these deep fakes that are becoming like kind of prolific on social media. You don't know what the provenance is of any video and if it's authentic or not. And in my mind, it's not just authenticating whether someone is human, it's authenticating the provenance. There will probably be, I imagine there might be AI generative models in the future that create, great content online, and we don't want to, disprove that. We want to prove that that content actually comes from that AI model and is authenticated in itself. And I think like the deepfake kind of agenda and the conversations and it's happening around it right now is really going to push the need for provenance and authentication on social media, especially with the upcoming presidential election. I think that is really going to hammer home the need for, the blockchain and the added value to that.
That's going to be it. And I mean, I've actually toyed around and made some of these deep fakes. And if you've heard of 11 Labs, they can clone your voice with, I'm not kidding, 1 to 3 minutes worth of audio. That's it, 1 to 3 minutes. So what I did via my digital human thing, we were trying to make some demos. One of the demos I wanted to make was, okay, this can be like a sales assistant. You can be on a website looking to buy something, you have some questions, and up can pop, maybe a celebrity to help you with it. And the little demo we made was, hey, I want to buy a set of golf clubs, and up pops Tiger Woods. And we interact, and he asks me questions, and he gets to know about my game. He recommends a set of golf clubs, and then goes, hey, I'll give you 10% discount now, and a virtual golf lesson in the metaverse if you buy. And of course I buy. So what I did was I took some recording of his, popped it into 11 Labs, and then typed my script, and he does that. And you would never know. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've also, because I live here in Brazil, okay, and I don't speak very much Portuguese, you're able to clone your own voice and then get it to speak another language. And that is just bananas as well. So, but we have some really cool technology that, you know, can track my face and my movements and have a video right here of Angelina Jolie and her voice and doing the same sort of thing. And, you know, if I have it, God knows what else is out there. You know, it's so we're in big trouble. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic about this, you know, AI future, but I'm also terrified about many of the potential horrific repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would put myself in a similar position. You know, I think my first, maybe it was the same tool that you referenced, but I think I saw someone making new Kanye lyrics, you know, and you can get pop stars to sing whatever you want now, right? Which is really scary, and you know, people beyond the grave even as well.
Yeah, I mean, what was the one the other day? Johnny Cash singing. I can't remember, but something quite ridiculous. Oh, I'm a Barbie girl. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's what they did. I posted about this a lot. I mean, they had you know, the likes of Nirvana singing Blink-182 songs and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. The kind of way I see this going, and I sort of put this on my podcast a little while ago. We went into a bit of depth on it with a guy who was head of music for Gala Games, friend of mine called Brandon Tatum, really cool guy. He's got interesting insights on it. Is that I think it'll just sort of split, and there'll be a market for synthetic content and a market for you know, real and organic content. Because the example I gave is that it's a little bit like the diamond industry. So for, you know, hundreds of years, a diamond has been the way you know, propose and show your love for your future wife, and you do that by, you know, the old 3-month salary thing. You spend a fortune on this diamond, of which, you know, if you go into it, diamonds are not actually rare. It's completely artificial, and they take billions of years to form, quite literally. They're dug out of the ground by, you know, kids and slave labor, and they are put a very artificially high price. And along comes this new technology that is able to make a carbon copy, absolutely identical item, of which an expert cannot tell the difference unless he's got some sort of weird laser machine. And they're made in a couple of weeks, and they cost half the money. But some people will still pay double for the real thing, even though you actually cannot tell. And that's kind of the way I see these things going. But also, you got Tencent is pumping out quite literally thousands of, you know, AI music tracks, and then, you know, 1 in 1,000 makes a hit, and then they're happy. But that's just not good for the overall market. And you got so many people trying to follow their dreams of, you know, becoming a singer, and now they got AI trancing all over them.
Yeah, I think that I love that example. I completely agree. It's also probably the best use of the phrase carbon copy you could ever have. So
yeah, that's very true.
But yeah, I think it's kind of speaks to a broader point that I've kind of talked about in the past. In, you know, what is happening in Web3 is, you know, some people will see blockchain and crypto as fully replacing the existing financial world, and I kind of take the view that I don't think that's quite true. I think it's probably more going to give people the option to opt out of that world, and you know, everything in between. And I think that's a nice example where AI and Web3 will produce a new market, right, for something that didn't exist before, and there still will be a craving for the old and the authentic, quote unquote, thing. And I think, you know, what do you think of that in general for crypto? Are you someone who sees, you know, us all just using crypto payment solutions in the future, or do you think it will always kind of coexist?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the problem with a lot of these sort of technologies is that they're still very much in their infancy. They're going to take a very long time to become completely prolific. And the hype cycle that has gone on with crypto, and then with NFTs, and then with metaverse, and now into AI, everyone just wants everything right now. And, you know, that's just not going to happen. Bitcoin's been around for, what, 13, 14 years. I'm a huge Bitcoin believer, but I don't use it every day for sending payments. I do send USDT, etc., a lot, and it is brilliant. Okay. And, you know, like, even in the setup of my last company, I was having to put payments through my own bank account and then send them to pay bills and stuff like that. It was a complete nightmare. I remember sending to book like an act, I had to send $40,000, and 2 weeks later it hadn't turned up, and I found out that it got rejected by the bank, sent back to me $2,000 something later. And there was nothing I could do. Call up the bank. Sorry, unless you're a customer, we can't speak to you. It's ridiculous. At least, payments on the blockchain are amazing, and we all know how fantastic it is, and it's fast and it's cheap. The issue is that there's a very significant hurdle to getting over that, and I still nearly my pants with fear when I'm sending a payment as to will it actually get there. I quite literally last week was sending $1,000 to a friend of mine, and I happened to have $700 in USDT and $250 in USDC, and I added him. It was happened to be on crypto.com, and I added him, and I sent the first one and I sent the second one, and the first one got there and the second one didn't. And when I was out looking in, I'm like, hang on, I don't even recognize that actual payment. So it's like my wife, she's like, I want access to all the crypto, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. It's just, no, if I can make mistakes, I'm not risking that. So the industry has got a very, very significant hurdle to get over, because for most people, it's too complicated. Now, the thing that I do hope is that we have seen, Elon Musk did a partnership with eToro to enable crypto payments on the Twitter network. And I think when, I can send money from my Twitter handle to your Twitter handle, that's the sort of thing we need, because no one's really going to be able to come up with a brand new app tomorrow and get it to 1 billion users in the next couple of years. That's just ferociously difficult. Threads got to 100 million users or whatever it is. Yeah, let's incorporate digital payments into Threads, etc. But there are really significant negative downsides to be it Meta or be it Twitter being in charge of those. And, we've just seen the head of the European Central Bank talk about the digital euro and how, she wants to do that because Christine Lagarde, because of the fact that she's afraid that, some of the big companies will steal it away from them. But she also, on this call, and go check it out, she was tricked because it was funnily enough, an AI deepfake of Zelensky. She thought she was talking to Zelensky. She wasn't. It was an AI deepfake. And he said, yes, but it will be about control. And she says, well, yes, it will be about some kind of control. She said, right now in the EU, you can't really spend more than 1,000 euros without, being on the black market. And she said it'd be 300 or 400 euros on the digital euro will be tracked for your own safety and for, a counter-terrorist, et cetera, et cetera. But the potential downsides of where that can go when every single dollar of ours is monitored and potentially somewhat incentivized, your spending by a government is completely bananas, and that's why I believe in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think, you're completely right. In the crypto space, there's been maybe this focus on tech centricity at the kind of maybe the cost of user centricity, which I think is something that AI has really taken off recently with ChatGPT. Is it's so easy and intuitive to use ChatGPT that the focus on user centricity has made it, the new buzzword that everyone is kind of completely hype cycled on right now. And I think another relationship that we see, we kind of mentioned already, the kind of the benefit of using blockchain and the provenance and the immutability that can, be used as maybe guardrails in a way for AI in the future to remove deepfakes, improve provenance and all this kind of stuff. Another angle that I've seen being pushed quite heavily that relates cryptocurrency specifically to AI is around payment rails. How difficult is it to KYC and set up a bank account in any kind of Western country? Imagine, it's impossible basically for AI, but imagine a future in which AI can, create purchases, actually use other AIs, pay for services. You just type in, a phrase, I want you to create a new website, and it does everything automatically. You're in this space, Colin. You obviously have been in the crypto space as well. Have you thought about the overlap between those two fields and how payment rails can be used?
Yeah, well, look, you've put it perfectly there, and I use this example a lot as well. We in the Web3 space talk about, what's going to onboard the next 10 or 100 million people, into Web3. Well, basically ChatGPT just didn't bother talking about that. They just made an amazing revolutionary product that is so simple and everyone wants to use it. That's what we need to focus on doing. And everyone is way too concentrated on the tech. And that's just natural. That's how it happens. We've already seen some of these AI agents, and, we're going to see an awful lot of it more, taking their own initiative to just go and execute tasks. And one of them even went on to TaskRabbit and got a human to input the catchphrase, the little letters thing. And even the other person on the other side said, hang on, how are you doing this? And the AI lied and said, I'm blind. So, like, if you guys have ever heard of a guy called Eliezer Yudowsky, and you can find him for several, I think he's got a book and or podcast or several things going, We're All Going to Die. And he describes half a dozen different scenarios where if AI is given a task to, go and do something, it'll shortcut it and it'll mean curtains for the rest of it. It's quite depressing to think of. But yeah, I mean, look, so just the other day, Elon Musk announced his X.ai, and I sat and watched or listened to all of the, Twitter spaces and went into a lot of detail. And ultimately, he's doing it with a different approach, which is to understand the universe. And he's got some of the best mathematicians, physicists, deep learners, all this sort of stuff, because that's what they want to do. And if you think about, AI is going to be as smart as the average human relatively soon. And then after that, it'll be smarter than Einstein. And after that, God knows, and imagine what sort of things it can bring. I mean, his point is, well, until it sort of invents something new, some new physics theory or proves something, well, what kind of use is it? So he's doing it that way. But he also said that we're 5 or 6 years away from a digital superintelligence. And, that's basically the singularity, when after that, we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, it could be lights out, but it also could create a utopian world of complete abundance where no one needs to work and there is no hunger or poverty or anything like that. The way I like to describe it is that, if we take and look at with Tesla's Optimus robot and what the Boston Dynamics guys are going to do, within 5 years, they'll be selling those things for $20K, and it'll work 24/7, 23/7 for no money, and stuff like that. It'll completely obliterate. He says, if you think the market for cars is big, wait till you see the market for human labor. It's insane.
Yeah.
So anyone working digitally is going to be challenged by these AI bots, and everyone working physically is going to be challenged by these, humanoid robots. But when we have that, what it'll do is it'll have an effect, basically like the Gutenberg printing press. So whenever that was invented, before that, books, usually the Bible, cost the equivalent of several $1,000s. And then in comes the printing press, and it goes down several orders of magnitude. When we get AI and robotics working on stuff, maybe we can do that with, let's try food for starters. Make food cheaper by 90%. Then let's do shelter. Then let's do healthcare and maybe consumer products after that. And then, maybe a couple of $100 from the government will give us all that we need to leave. And then we can all, be happy ever after, or maybe kill each other. Who knows?
Yeah. And not just the AI.
Well, I think a lot of people will, because they need it. They need a job. They need a sense of purpose. How do we, when oh, nice to meet you. What do you do? I mean, that's it. And people are somewhat, not completely, but somewhat defined by the job they do. And when they don't have a job, look at all the millionaires and billionaires who've made more money than they can possibly need. What do? They mostly continue working.
It's hard, yeah, because like I guess you're right. There's kind of two camps right now. There's this utopian and dystopian camp, and Elon Musk, even like a year ago, 2 years ago, was saying we need to put the brakes on AI. Right? He was one of these entrepreneurs that was pulling together to say, okay, let's stop the development and research into AI until we understand what the consequences will be. And then, like you said, he's just created this new company that's going to push it. I know that they're kind of pushing more for like the modeling of the universe rather than the development.
Correct.
Kind of, yeah. It's more for like generative research rather than the point of like making business and kind of making decisions and things like this. It's scary though, and I think there's a lot of people, especially people that don't necessarily understand the space and the immediate consequences that they're seeing right now, or maybe the kind of inflammatory headlines are saying is you won't have a job in 5 years, you won't have a job in 10 years, and they look at government and they think, okay, is this a government that I think is going to be reactive and on their toes? And they think obviously not. They don't understand the space themselves. What's that going to mean for the everyday person? And like you're saying, it's scary. AI can make decisions better than people to an extent, in like especially in menial repetitive tasks, and robotics is already starting to replace jobs. What's the future going to look like?
Well, I'd rather not go down this horrible, negative area. I mean, the one thing I would say is that take the US government. It's comprised of mostly old age pensioners. How in the world are they going to understand this? I mean, it is. If
I use ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, most of them can't do it. But like, put it this way, most of them do not have the capacity to understand cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, etc. They just don't. I mean, look at Warren Buffett and his partner in crime who all over Bitcoin and stuff like that. These guys were literally past retirement age when the internet came along. So I just don't think they can really grasp. Plus, there's, it's a great phrase, which is, it's very hard to get someone to understand something when their paycheck relies on them not understanding. Their entire world is based on the traditional financial system. They're not just going to go, oh yeah, this Bitcoin thing looks great, let's just tangent over there. It's just not really going to happen. What did we see recently? The guy from BlackRock being on CNBC talking about Bitcoin's the next financial asset, Larry Fink, whatever his name is. I did a post there a little while ago with like 5 or 6 major players who used to be highly critical of Bitcoin who are then flipped, including Michael Saylor. Biggest bull proponent out there, literally called it a scam and said it'll be dead in 6 months. So it's just one by one. I've always kind of said that I don't really know anyone who's gone down this journey of truly trying to understand the entire, blockchain, crypto, and Bitcoin, and not, go that way. If you really make that effort, almost everyone does get on board. But it's the issue because it's difficult. It's not easy. I can't teach my mother about it in 5 minutes. She's just never going to understand it.
Well, this was the aim of this podcast, was basically to kind of, try to describe Web3 and some of the core components in quite easy, digestible, practical, tangible terms. And it's hard. Like, even me and Jack, who kind of understand the space, each episode we're challenging ourselves. We're like, oh, well, I've learned a few things here. And it's difficult. Like, how do policymakers keep up? It's why regulation is always so far behind the technology. I think a good example of this is when I saw the US Senate, when they had the big social media giants and Apple in there, and they're asking them questions about the tech. And it was so clear. They were just talking two completely different languages, and there was just no understanding whatsoever. Just how can they regulate things they don't understand? It's always something I've struggled to understand myself.
I mean, it's like Larry Page or one of the guys was on the Senate, and some guys goes, I have one of your phones, and are you, listening to me? And he goes, that's an iPhone. like they really just like totally do not get the absolute basics. And I mean, but there's another one, okay? And this is a debate I'm not going to get into, but when AI starts shedding jobs, which it will. I mean, giving everyone a universal basic income will have half of America screaming socialism, and no, we're not doing that. You know what I mean? And that comes down to the fact that for generations upon generations, people have either worked the fields or worked the mines or whatever it is. And that gives them, meaning, and, they work a certain amount of hours, and they, get a certain amount of pay, and they live their lives. When that goes away, I mean, there's a lot of people thinking that, we might just go bananas and kill each other, like I said. If you give a whole lot of, not particularly, educated or maybe deprived people, loads of money, it's like everyone when they're winning the lottery. That doesn't always work out really well.
And people say it's going to help all us creatives, and then we're sat here like, well, I'm not very creative. What am I going to do?
Look, I think everyone can figure out. I have 100 things I'd like to do if I didn't have to work anymore. You know what I mean? It's just that if you want to paint, great, but who's going to buy it when I can get Midjourney to pump me out, or you can write songs, but I can just I mean, Google has an AI algorithm right now that I can go, write me a rap song with a country vibe and with Dolly Parton singing about the moonshine, and it will give you that thing. And then
I'd listen to that track.
Yeah. But so it begs the question as to who's going to do that when everything is look, let's go one bit further. ChatGPT has essentially democratized content, and it's going to democratize knowledge overall. You know what I mean? I mean, I talk to ChatGPT constantly. And when I say talk to, I do talk to it. I have an app on my phone, and I use voice. And I absolutely cannot wait for the day. And I really wanted to build this myself, but I can't. I wanted to build an app where it sits in your headphones all the time and it sits on Alexa and it's watching everything you do and it's listening to everything you say, and I can kind of go, yeah, okay, put that in my diary, or put that on my shopping list, or whatever it is, because it can do it. That's it. We've crossed this boundary now where computers can understand everything and we can understand them. And that's the most important thing for people to understand and recognize, is that we no longer have to talk to computers in a certain way to get them to understand us. They can just listen. And
it's totally changed that interface, right?
Yeah. There's massive potential privacy concerns, but I operate a program on my laptop called Rewind, and it quite literally watches and listens to everything that goes on your screen, and then I can search for it. I can go, hey, what was that article I saw the other day? And it'll pull up a screenshot, and then I can bring it up. Those things are coming. I mean, that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, with Samantha, I watched it again a couple of weeks ago, and I actually watched it going, is that all? I think it's going to be so much bigger and better than that. I mean, forgetting about the falling in love thing, but that's also happening as well. I mean,
there was an article of the first AI marriage, I think 2030. They're estimating.
No, there's been one. There's already been an AI marriage.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's been an AI. Yeah, I read about this a little while ago. But there's an app called Replica, and I tried it out just for fun. But at the end of the day, kids are forming actual meaning relationships with AI. I think there's some really scary stuff to potentially happen up here in the future. But digital friendships and relationships are going to be normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard a lot of people talking about, being able to interact with something humanoid, and I guess we'll kind of get onto exactly what you're doing at I know it's in stealth mode. I'm not sure how much you can tell us, but sure. I've seen so many compelling use cases now for that, whether it's for people in care homes, who need someone to talk to, and the loneliness crisis that's going on. And I saw just today, I think the platform's called Air. I don't know if you've seen this, and there's a full AI assistant verbal conversation using this kind of combination of the large language models and the text to speech, where you can literally have essentially pre-sales calls with an AI assistant. And it sounds a little bit hokey at the minute, but it does the job. It's completely replacing the function of what you would normally pay someone to do, which is kind of frightening, but also really impressive.
Well, I mean, for most of my career, I was in sales for big tech companies, and the sales trainer from my very first job almost 20 years ago is still a friend of mine. And I've been talking to him about AI, and he was just posting about this because he has his own podcast and stuff. And someone has built like a sales training AI helper where it'll listen into your calls, and then at the end of it give you a summary of what happened. And I use those meeting AIs and they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. It transcribes the whole meeting for you. It gives you notes, and what this one's going to do is help a salesperson be better. But then they'll bring it in and it'll be live, and they'll just tell you what to say. And then that's absolutely incredible. And then it'll just replace the salesperson or the customer service person automatically, completely. So yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing. Ultimately, myself, I teamed up with a friend of mine, and he has been in the 3D motion graphics, metaverse avatar space for a long time. And, he has photorealistic avatars. Like I said, that you can have looks Angelina Jolie, but it'll copy my facial movements and talk like that, but in her voice. So I kind of went, well, let's strap an LLM on the bottom of that and create a turnkey solution for brands who can activate a digital human for, conversational help with customer service information, anything like that. The way I see this going is that we're just so used to, I need a piece of information, I want to fix a problem, we Google, we look through, we search the answer. Very, very quickly, that's just going to go to, and I've seen it already, I've seen a website that just put a large language model chatbot front and center on their website. Because why look for something when you can just ask for it and it'll be delivered to you? So that's the way it's going already. But then they'll go one step further, which is, well, I personally think we need to ditch the keyboard. I think, again, computers can understand us, so we need to move to voice a little bit better. And why not have a conversation with a digital persona who is trained on all the company's data, is infinitely patient, has all of the time in the world, and is completely scalable? Because, how often are you trying to solve a problem and you get through to Mustafa in Hyderabad who, doesn't understand what you're saying? You can barely understand him. You're going to be on hold for how long? You're going to be transferred to another person. Then you'll have to reiterate the conversation completely again, and you'll do this several times, and you still won't get the answer. AI is perfectly aligned to solve all of these problems for us. So, we all know when I call my bank and I get through to Eva, the crappy chatbot, and I go, yeah, I have a suspicious activity on my credit card. She goes, you want to apply for a new credit card? Great, let me transfer you. No, those days are kind of behind us, I think. And I think all of those chatbot companies are getting LLMs very, very quickly, so that we will be talking to AI for help and support around anything. But what we want to do is really bring AI to life by personifying it with a 3D virtual avatar that you can sort of have a bit of rapport and a bit of bond with, and they can be empathetic. And some people think computers can't be empathetic, and I completely disagree. I think, empathy is, can be done by a digital character, because it's like, can you have empathy for a Disney cartoon? Absolutely. And that's the way that's the way it's going. I got into this huge spat with a guy on LinkedIn recently about, I think that, digital, call it a life coach or someone can help you along, or maybe a therapist, and I don't have a huge amount of experience with therapy, but it seems to me that, just getting some help and guidance and having someone completely understand what you're saying can be done with LLM. Other people think absolutely not. But, Elon Musk says that there really isn't very much that an AI isn't going to be able to do better than us within time. So, digital humans are going to take over from some of the smaller tasks of getting information and technical support and solving problems, and it's going to rapidly accelerate from there. I mean, ultimately, when it gets as good as your average office worker who does their job completely on a computer, who knows where things are going to go. The only positive thing in slowing this down is the fact that big corporations are so to trying to incorporate anything quickly, so they will be reliant on humans, and I think AI will just augment us and get us faster and more productive for quite a while to come.
Well, that's really interesting, because we spoke previously about the metaverse, and we had Robert Rice on, who's been in the metaverse space for quite a while. And one of the things that we kind of agreed on was that we're in the digital age right now, and that means convenience, but it also means a lack of emotions, a lack of empathy. It's really hard to kind of get empathy across the screen when you're just staring at people like this. And one of the goals of the metaverse is to bring the human nature, to bring the emotions, actually have people react real time. And that's going to bring like a lot of, like you say, you're talking about therapy, like it can help in healthcare, where you really want that personal touch with the convenience of the digital space. That is one of the goals of the metaverse. It's really interesting that your kind of goal is to take that one step further and then use AI underneath to kind of, push the empathy, but also have it, working super quickly, working to a higher standard, like you say, with unlimited patience and all of these added benefits that AI can, even bring to the humanity aspect as well.
Yeah, and so much more efficiently, right?
Oh, I mean, even if, look, what does ChatGPT, etc., what does it really do if you break it down? It is very, very good at summarizing text.
Yes.
That's what it's actually really good at doing. So if all it does from a very basic standpoint is I call up and I talk to an AI and I tell it all about my terrible problem that I have, that my internet's working or my phone is gone, whatever it is, and it can crunch that down and it can put it in a system for a human to go and solve that issue, and it can notify the right people. But it will go significantly further than that. But like you said there a little while ago, these AI companions are coming as well. So this loneliness epidemic is a massive issue, whether it's old people or young teenagers. I mean, go look at what's happening. Go to the subreddit for Replica. And you will see that there's so many kids that are going, no, I prefer a digital relationship, because an AI isn't going to break my heart, and it's not going to be, moody, and it's not going to, blame me for this and blah, blah, blah. And they will. I mean, it's a terrifying thought, and I think there's colossal amounts of downsides from that. But these 15-year-old kids who are too scared to talk to the girls, and they're just going to stay indoors and talk to their AI girlfriend instead. I don't think that's a good thing. What I do have hope for is the fact that these AI personalities can act like life coaches, and they can actually give you, it's like having Tony Robbins sit in your house all the time, giving you sort of encouragement to get out and do something or start a business. I mean, why not?
That'd be terrifying.
I don't like that guy personally, but everyone else, I use that example.
That's super interesting, right? Because when you talk about like the AI companions, I'm kind of wondering if what's the route to getting there? Because right now, most people's experience with LLMs and these AI chatbots is from these data sets or these models that are trained on the global data set. Do you see in the future it being more of a you could have an employee of a company that's trained on a specific data set for a company, or maybe, if it's going to be a therapist or something, it has to be trained on a certain subset of data. There's a lot of checks and balances on what it can do. It gets tested and then almost like certified. So you can almost certify these AI personalities. Do you think that's the kind of where it will go to be adopted?
Yeah, I mean, I think the future is a combination of multiple specialist LLMs. And it was actually leaked there a little while ago that ChatGPT is, 8 or 12 sort of different LLMs, all like working asynchronously. And when you put a question in, it figures out which one is going to deal with it, things like that. I mean, what I've always said is for what we're trying to do, yes, I can build on top of ChatGPT, but I don't need my let's call them an e-commerce platform, and we're putting a sort of chatbot on that. They don't need to understand theoretical physics and the history of Indochina. It just needs to be very, very good and fast on the data that it is, and a subset of general knowledge, essentially. So I think these sort of smaller ones, I mean, the CEO of Stable Diffusion, he's a really cool guy, and he was saying, and I posted about this the other day, that he said by the end of the year we'll have a version of ChatGPT on our phones working offline. And I don't think it'll be there by the end of the year, but I give it a year and we will have that. Okay. I mean, there's a few people making versions of it and stuff. He also said there'd be no programmers in 5 years because it'll get that big. I mean, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. I think there'll be less and less low-level, entry-level coders, and it'll just push everyone up all the value chain to be enterprise architects. Like, just because I have the ChatGPT of 5 years into the future doesn't mean I can build an enterprise application. I don't understand a whole host around that thing, but it'll just do some of the work. But, going back to these, characters, I do think they're going to take on personas, and there will be what I would like to see is multiple personalities depending on what, so if you have a problem with your car and you need a mechanic, you talk to this guy. And, if you need a recommendation for what makeup to buy for your wife, you talk to this girl over here. And I think that, that specializations around that. But, putting a little screen of a very, very human like person that will talk to your granny in her nursing home just to listen to all her stories and make her feel wanted and loved and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's coming, and hopefully it'll solve a lot of problems. How is this going to come? Just to come back to your original question, well, the easiest way is Alexa. Lots of us have Alexa, and we talk to Alexa, and we put it, it'll just be an extension of that, in my opinion, or they'll bring out. Google has one, Facebook will have one, Microsoft has one, lots of them. So those, sort of Siri, etc., it'll be Siri or Alexa that will just develop into that. And then you'll be able to click a button and enable Siri as a kind of life coach, and to listen to everything you do, and to make sure you don't forget stuff, and to manage your day in your diary, and make suggestions for how you can do your job better or improve your relationships. That's all coming.
And I'm really glad you brought up the coding again. I just want to make one point on it quite quickly, is that I think it's quite interesting. I've got a coding background. I really find it so useful. And I know that, there's a lot of kind of negatives on the side of, okay, does this mean there'll be no jobs for coders in the future, especially like you say, the junior, lower entry kind of people? And maybe it probably does, but it also lowers the barrier to entry to so many things. Like, I can spin up a website in a second, basically, without paying someone a week to develop something. And that's really exciting. That's going to create whole new economies and, create a lot more inclusivity into these kind of usually high barrier to entry kind of fields. And I personally find that extremely exciting. And I think on the assistive stuff that you were talking about, Granny, having someone to talk to, there's so much utility apart from just the fact of having someone to talk to. I saw that there was a company there that were focused on kind of AI buddies, basically, but with a test to part of it in the kind of in the system, they have inbuilt like a mental health check where they're actually monitoring the level of Alzheimer's based on the responses by just having normal conversations and managing like the rate at which they respond and how well they respond. I'm like, that is such utility that's coming from this space that you couldn't really have imagined like 15 years ago. And it's incredible we can have that degree of kind of improvement to someone's day-to-day life.
Absolutely, and I think it'll just become completely omnipresent. When we talk about the metaverse and stuff like that, I still am hopeful for the metaverse. But Apple came out with the Vision Pro, and that's the face of things to come. But until we can get Apple Vision Pro in a pair of glasses exactly like you're wearing, it's going to be slow going. When you can put on a very lightweight pair of glasses like that and it'll augment stuff in front of you, game over. I mean, totally the world changed. Now, I have a friend of mine, unbelievably smart dude. He's got a extremely significant history of working in top healthcare companies. He's working on an intraocular lens that gets inserted into your eye in a operation just like a cataracts, which cataracts is the most popular eye operation in the entire world, but it has an 8K TV in there and it powers itself by blinking. Swear to God, promise you.
Wow.
Imagine that. Then you can just watch a movie with your eyes closed, or you get anything streamed to you at all the time. Yeah,
that is terrifying.
This is a Black Mirror episode.
Exactly, and then that'll just link in with Neuralink, and then we can all just sort of live in the metaverse.
Well, we said this thing that technology, like the screens started off as projectors, then they became TVs, then they became laptops, and they're slowly, progressively getting closer and closer to the brain and to the individual. I'm just wondering, like, what are the timelines for that? Because I personally find that stuff quite exciting.
About 2 years away till clinical trials, and a few years away after that until it starts becoming mainstream. But a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, get away! I'm not doing that." I'd be like, I told him, I was like, "I'm first in line. Suck it to my veins." I do think that with various different degrees of this sort of stuff, the people who adopt it very early will have massive advantage, and then it will create this huge gap of the people who use it and the people who don't. I mean, coming back to your coding one, I can't remember the stat that he says, but he says something like 40% of all code on GitHub is AI generated right now. How long has ChatGPT been out? 9 months. Give it another 9 months, that would be 90%, pretty much, or something like that. And then it'll just be like, oh well, humans don't code at all, and that's what could go wrong.
Wow. The one thing that I would say is that, rather than looking for coders now, companies are starting to look for, what are they called? Like prompters, like AI prompters.
Engineers.
Yeah, prompt engineers. Like that's the new thing, because like you say, like, you don't need coders when you have prompt engineers that could do the job of 10 coders potentially. Like, scary and exciting.
I think it comes down to the power going forward is with the people who can ask the right questions. Because when we've got this magical machine that'll spit out answers to anything you can think of, it's just down to being able to ask the right question. And there's an Einstein quote on this, which he says, if I was given a very hard problem to solve, he said, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the question and 5 minutes thinking about the answer. And that, comes back to the fact that, that's why these guys are called prompt engineers, because they know how to ask the question to get the right answer. You know what I mean? There's one of the other things is that, coming back to my point about we need to kill keyboards, and like, I think I don't have an iPhone, but on the iPhone app, there is the official ChatGPT app, and you can just push to talk and you can speak to it and you get the answer like that. Okay. I use a different app, and I also use a plugin on Chrome where I can just talk to it like it is now. When you speak your question, you tend to be a lot more verbose. You tend to be a lot more descriptive. And I find you get a way better answer than if you just typed it, because we're sort of used to just cramming all of our thoughts in down into 5 or 6 words for Google and then looking for the answer. So this is just a new way of thinking about how we go about the process of getting the answer we want.
Yeah, it's like harnessing that internal monologue that you've got, your stream of consciousness when you say something, as opposed to writing it down and then you kind of are in your own head. You're like, oh, is that the right way of phrasing that? You're not thinking about the actual question anymore, right? You're thinking about how you're presenting it, which is a completely different beast. But yeah, I think that's a whole super interesting side to this.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a cartoon the other day, and it's two boxes, and on one box there's a guy talking to a girl, and he goes, "Oh, I can get AI. I can just give it one bullet point, and it'll flash out an entire email for me." And then on the other side is, "Oh, look, I've got an email, and I can get AI to shrink it down to one bullet point." It's just going to be your AI talking to my AI, in the
Yeah,
future. I mean, that's kind of the way it's going.
yeah, exactly. So listen, Colin, we've spent a lot of time talking about AI, and there are so many things in Web3, and I know you've touched on lots in your podcast as well. And one of the interesting things I saw was your conversation with Sebastian Bourget from Sandbox. And I'd be interested to hear what is your outlook other than what Apple are doing. What's your outlook generally on the metaverse? Because I know he was highlighting this really interesting concept about people almost preferring to buy digital assets because of the social community aspect. And do you see that as being a big part of this in the future?
I've been saying that for years, through the sort of conference circuit and stuff like that I've done, talking about just trying to get people to understand why people would buy something that is digital, that is easily replicable, that is not physical. But there's lots of things that are digital that have value, and we need a way of solidifying value onto the of those assets, and we do that via the blockchain and NFTs. The way I describe it is that if you talk to anyone who has kids between, I don't know, 7 and 17, those kids will most likely play games. And if they play games, they are most likely purchasing digital assets within those games, such as downloadable content or skins. And there's an awful lot of kids, especially over the last years, that were locked indoors over COVID and did very little socializing. So they did all their socializing online and in game. And what has happened is that it has changed in their mind that they care more about the persona and the sort of appearance of their digital self being their avatar than they do their real self. And I mean, I realized this, it's 3 years ago. A friend of mine, I was asking him, telling him about my new venture. I said, "Do you understand, the metaverse and NFTs?" He goes, "Well, not really." But he goes, "My kid, plays games." And the other day I said to him, "Okay, we need to buy you a new pair of sneakers. Let's go to the mall." And the kid said, "No, can I have that money to spend on my avatar?" Because that's what he really cares about. And they spend all this time socializing. So you got an entire generation now who's growing up a very acute, how do I say, value for digital assets. And Bitcoin's just another digital asset that a lot of people in the traditional sense don't understand. But the way Sebastian articulates it, which I'm not going to be able to do as well as him, but he talks about when you buy a digital asset, that thing is in your wallet and it's not going to get lost, and it doesn't get dirty, and it doesn't degrade. You will have it forever. You can always trade it. I mean, then we can go down the line of talking about digital land and the insane amounts of money that we're going for Sandbox and Decentraland, things like that. I mean, I think considering, a lot of people making digital twins and selling them for a lot of money, I'm not really so big on that. But people have, coming back to the normal things, people have collected things since the dawn of time. Coins, stamps, records, sports memorabilia. Now there's collected digital assets, but those assets can be a little bit more interesting because they can show proof that you went to a concert, or you had that experience, or that you won this thing as you talked to this celebrity. And I definitely do think, I mean, NFTs to me will eventually fade out of the nomenclature when we're just used to buying and purchasing and talking about assets that are digital versus assets that are physical. It'll just be, left and right. There's no one's better than the other. And for me, we've got a way to go until there's become, but ticketing, proof of attendance, membership, loyalty programs. There's some super cool stuff that we can do this. Scott Page from Pink Floyd gets some really great examples on my podcast. He's literally building an entire platform to enable this, and doing some super cool stuff where NFTs can be enabled if you're at a physical place. And there's loads of really, really awesome stuff to be done there as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely bullish with the technology going forward.
Yeah, I listened to Gary V on this, and he's like an expert in the space. And I love how he kind of digests these things and makes them really easy to understand. And one of the things he says is, right now, how I understand who someone is I go to their social media account, I look at their Facebook, their LinkedIn, all these types of things. And he imagines the future being, I will go to your Web3 wallet and I'll see what NFTs you own. I'll see that you are provably, one of the top 1% of listeners to Pink Floyd, for example, or you've been to these concerts, or you invest in these kind of small businesses or enterprises, and that will be your social currency, your identity going forward. And I find this concept really exciting. I think, like you say, a lot of the people that are investing in the metaverse right now, I think that 50% of the 300 million regular users in the metaverse are below the age of 13. Like, they understand it like no one else right now. And in 10, 15 years, they will be the people that are pioneering this. And it's just exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it depends on what your definition of metaverse is. I mean, to me, I kind of feel the metaverse has to have some sort of blockchain element to it, but to a lot of others and most, it doesn't matter. It's just an online digital world of which, Fortnite and Roblox and stuff. And those, they're in the hundreds of millions of users.
Well, why do you say that, Colin? So why for you does it only qualify as metaverse when the blockchain's involved?
That's just my personal opinion. I'm just not a gamer, so I've never been, a Fortnite, Roblox, or any of those sort of games users. So all of my metaverse interactions have been with what I, consider blockchain-based metaverses, such as Decentraland, Sandbox. The list goes on, because they are, digital worlds in which you can build things, you can have businesses and you can exchange value. But it is based on the fact that, like with either a Sandbox or a Decentraland, is decentralized, and it's around a DAO, and they have a currency, and you use that currency. Whereas some of the other ones are literally just games made by a game developer that is a world. And I personally think there's a differentiation. I'm not saying I'm right, because I think most people would just consider metaverse any digital land. But I do think that more and more they will become more decentralized and incorporate the blockchain, incorporate NFTs. Yeah, I mean, I know Roblox ditched a lot of that, and there was there was even a currency that was around some of the ones that died because people, unfortunately, NFTs have had a bad rap because of $1 million monkey JPEGs and stuff like that people just don't understand. But, at the end of the day, that's just this new age flex. If you've grown up in your mother's basement, but you got millions of dollars, you don't care about having a Ferrari. You want a punk to show off on your Twitter. And that is worth more to you. And people will judge me more on that than having a Rolex or a Monet on your, and that's the easiest way to understand it.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with that, because a lot of people would say, metaverse is a very, very broad church as a concept, but maybe even call it like meaningful metaverse is what you get when you have the blockchain. It's not really particularly meaningful unless you have this strong notion of ownership, identity, value exchange in it. I think that's kind of the real goal of metaverse, instead of it just being a gaming thing, I think.
Yeah, and is it portable? I mean, portability between metaverses is going to become a whole lot more important. Whereas if you're just in Roblox, they don't have an incentive to let you take stuff out into other games, whereas in the metaverse, I mean, there's on my Web3 Leaders podcast that's coming out right now, I have Nick Rossa, and he is the metaverse strategy lead for Accenture. And his job is to, advise some of the biggest companies in the world on their metaverse strategy. And he's like, the metaverse is a platform. It's a platform of it's a platform of metaverses, and exactly as you say there, ownership, identity, all of those sort of things are very, very important. And it's just done in a portability of your assets is done in a conceptualized in a different way than a private gaming company who has one goal, which is to make as much money as possible.
I think that portability gets to kind of one of the core value propositions of Web3 in general. I'm curious, kind of maybe aside from what you're doing in the AI, with your AI kind of venture, is there any one thing in particular in Web3 in general? We've covered Bitcoin, metaverse, AI. Is there any one particular use case or kind of problem that you think will be solved through these technologies working in conjunction in the future that you're kind of most excited about?
I think there's an awful lot happening in Bitcoin at the moment. A lot. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the ordinals thing, I'm not a huge fan. Bitcoin DeFi is coming. I mean, Bitcoin is the only thing that is, you know, really, truly, truly decentralized. There's, you know, so Satoshi, no one knows, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of stuff. I mean, Michael Saylor's building out some really interesting tech on top of Bitcoin. You got the Lightning Network, which just today got adopted by Binance really badly with horrible fees and stuff. But you know, it's coming. It's coming. And I think if we just use that as the basis for everything else, you know, that's the way it'll come, because we've got some small countries adopting Bitcoin as a currency. We have BlackRock and another one of the European assets bringing out EFTs, of which maybe then after that's done, the institutional money will pile in, and you know, little by little, the naysayers are basically being silenced because they don't do it. I mean, you know, I'm just doing a podcast episode on this right now, just tackling the Bitcoin criticisms, you know. Oh, it doesn't have any intrinsic value. Well, go down the rabbit hole and see where you come on that. Oh, it uses too much energy. Well, you know, also let's do a little bit of research about how much energy the banking system or the internet or anything like that uses, and how actually it can be a positive aspect on energy generation by quite literally incentivizing the lowest possible energy because it can grab it at any stage. Making Bitcoin the backbone of a lot more of these technologies is very, very exciting to me. And yeah, I mean, all I would generally tell people is study Bitcoin. I don't tell you to buy it. I tell you to study it.
Yeah.
You know, someone projected the Bitcoin logo onto the European Central Bank office there a while ago, and underneath just said study Bitcoin. I was like, brilliant, because I've been in it for years, and I listen to multiple podcasts, and I'm still learning almost on a daily basis. I mean, that's the terrible thing about it and the brilliant thing about it. But yeah, there's an awful lot to learn. It's fascinating, and I hope everyone does.
Yeah, you are right. I think institutional adoption is crucial. We're slowly starting to see it happen, which is very exciting. And I think the sheer number of kind of applications that we're seeing that, you know, couldn't have been envisioned 13 years ago with the advent of Bitcoin is just, yeah, it's incredible. So Colin, this has been an incredible episode. We have a segment now where we ask you 2 questions, and we're trying to ask all our guests the same 2 questions and see if there's consistency between the answers or how they evolve as the Web3 space evolves. So if you're ready, I'll ask the first one.
Sure.
In one sentence, what is Web3 to you?
I hate these questions. In one sentence, what is Web3? It's a collection of technologies around the concept of decentralization and the blockchain that will bring freedom, I think, to a lot of people via digital payments, digital worlds, and a whole lot more. I really want to hear what the rest of your people said. I wish I was prepared for that, to be honest.
That was nice. That was
that was very powerful. I like it. Usually, like something like that, I would go straight to ChatGPT and be like, "Give me a one-word answer to this, a one-sentence answer."
Yeah, we'll shorten it for the show notes. Don't worry.
Yeah, good.
So the second question is maybe a bit easier. If you could choose anybody, dead or alive, to sit down with and discuss Web3, who would it be and why?
It would just be Michael Saylor. That's my goal, is to get him on my podcast. I'm a massive fan of his. I think he articulates it incredibly well, and I'm really glad. I mean, you know, the guy literally gave up running his multi-billion-dollar company to go, right, I'm going to put a CEO in place, and now I'm just going to go forward and, you know, sing the song of Bitcoin for the rest of my life. I mean, obviously, it, you know, will probably make him one of the richest men on the planet eventually. But I love that he talks about digital energy and stuff like that. And, you know, once you get down the rabbit hole, it's a fascinating place. So yeah, he's my favorite, you know, him, and there's plenty of other people like Pomp and stuff, but definitely Michael would be my choice.
Great. Thank you for that. So thank you for joining us, Colin, and thank you to those listening wherever you may be. And join us next time as we untangle a little more of Web3. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Untangling Web3, produced by Emma Camilleri.
Don't forget to send us your thoughts, questions, and comments on social media. And be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast provider to catch the next episode. See you next time to untangle a little bit more of Web3.
The views we express here are our own and do not reflect the views of our employers.